Hello there, welcome to another INFJ ramble. I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos um, and it kind of got my wheels turning in my mind, and there's a couple of things I wanted to explore. The first one was, I know like INFJs seem to proclaim that they are lonely or alone. And also, it seems like we don't have too many friends. And I don't know. I don't know. I've been watching some INFJ videos that conflict with that particular. Um, how do I say? Yeah. So I basically some INFJs were like talking about how they do have friends and they do like to hang out with people, and I started kind of thinking about I think it depends on the age range, maybe. Because I know when I was in my 20s and even possibly my early to mid 30s, I may have had, I probably did have more social tendencies, and I probably had friends or more friends that I would hang out with on a regular basis. You know what I mean? But then again, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I wasn't as self aware either. I was kind of still in the unfolding process. So, I was still kind of getting caught up in other people's energies and other people's activities and experiences, and I wasn't really even exploring myself. You know what I mean? I was just kind of like in it and enjoying seeing and living and experiencing things through other people versus through myself, if that even makes sense. So yeah, I had a more active social life when I was younger, and I was more apt to hanging out with all kinds of people, um, or more open to hanging out with different types of people and personalities. Um, but now I'm gonna be really honest. I prefer being alone. And I think when I was younger, I think I was afraid of being alone. You see the difference? When I was younger, I was afraid of being alone. I was afraid of facing loneliness or being alone. And so I immersed myself in all these activities and distractions and social interactions. And so, as I got older and people had their own life to live and they moved on and had families and children, and they just kind of like exited my experience. I was just kind of left with myself, and I was forced to really examine myself. And that's when I feel like I went through like the heaviest depressions. And like I said, I think depression is just a transitional phase, that a normal part of life that we all need to traverse in order to re-emerge as something or someone new. You know what I mean? Because we're not the same. We're never the same. We're constantly changing. But pardon me, at my current stage of life, I prefer being alone more so than social interaction. I have tried to attend social gatherings, and I find it, I don't want to say excruciating. Excruciating is a really, really strong word. Mm, it brings about a lot of anxiety. just because ever since I started disconnecting from the distractions that I had in my 20s and early 30s, and I started becoming really hypersensitive to who I am and how I function, I get overwhelmed easily because I'm so hypersensitive, and I feel like when I put myself in certain situations, I set myself up to get overloaded with information, and it drains me, if that even makes sense. I think I had a higher tolerance for these things when I was younger because, like I said, I hadn't like penetrated my layers, so I had all these layers of protection. But now that I've penetrated the layers and they've kind of fallen apart, I'm left with this very thin lining that is very, how do I say, just really vulnerable to everything and everyone around me. And that's why I become so particular about who I hang out with, what I consume. And I think like maybe some people think because I live this kind of lifestyle and being like biased or judgmental, but no, it's just I have such a thin layer because I've broken through so many layers and degrees of myself to get to this place that I'm hypersensitive and I just cannot handle it, and I choose not to tolerate it because it's a lot. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's distressing and more detrimental to my well-being than it should be. So, yeah, I do spend a lot of alone time. As far as having friends, I mean, how do you define a friend really? I feel like people come and go, you know, so even though you do make a connection with someone and it could be really satisfying in the moment and really fulfilling and really deep, it doesn't last. So, you know, I've kind of given up attachments to friendships, you know, and instead I see people and I appreciate them while they're here, and then, you know, when it's time to move on, it moves on. But I don't try to cling on to anything anymore, and I don't try to maintain a connection anymore, because obviously when it's there, and then when it's gone, or when it's in the process of leaving, and there's no sense holding on to someone or something that's leaving. So I don't really know like how to like say that. I mean, do I have friends? I suppose everyone is potentially can be a friend, but as far as friendships, like long lasting ones, I don't have that. And I'm not trying to play the victim. I'm just being very realistic, versus idealistic, and trying to create this like fantasy friendship that doesn't exist. Like I said, I think like it depends on where you're at. I might sound really pessimistic. I might sound really like, I don't know, negative, pessimistic, but it just depends on where you're at life. Like what stage of development you're at, because I've experienced all the, socialization and having friends, like I've experienced all that, and now I'm at a current phase in my life where I do need an excessive amount of alone time. I don't know that I consider or I'd want to label anyone as a friend per se versus a connection and a lot of these connections fade off, like they don't really last. So I don't invest too much into anyone really. You know what I mean? Because before I would invest so much into people, but you know, after so many attempts and failures of looking for someone who has a capacity to reciprocate that to me, I haven't found it. And to be honest, I've exhausted my ability to try anymore because of so many failed attempts to make these connections, that now I just kind of have come to a place of acceptance of, not everybody can, give or love or, want to commit to that type of longevity that I am willing to, and that's okay. Instead of trying to force it, I just kind of accept it, accept the realistic or the reality of it, you know what I mean? Um, yeah. So yeah, just I guess to wrap it up, there's different stages of development and growth, and just because you're at a particular stage of development doesn't mean that someone else is wrong. It's just you probably haven't experienced it yet, and that's why you lack the perception or the angle of it, so you have the tendency to judge it or criticize it when you just haven't experienced it, so you just don't know it. It doesn't make it right or wrong, good or bad. It's just something you don't quite understand yet because you haven't experienced it yet. But bottom line, I prefer my alone time. I don't know that the people in my life currently, if I would consider them friends, although I do respect them as human beings and I appreciate their presence. I don't have any attachments to how long these people will be on my journey with me because I feel like everything's so transitory. And when I was younger, I was not like this, but I'm not that person anymore. I'm, fast forward 20 years later, and this is where I'm currently at. I'm kind of curious to see where I'll be in the next 20 years. Like, it'd be interesting to look back on these videos and be like, whoa, like I'm still there, or wow, I'm not there. I've progressed quite a bit since that particular phase of life, or, maybe I'll go back to the whole socializing and communion place, but currently I'm in a pretty isolated sphere and I'm okay with it. And I'm not trying to make myself or you feel pity for me, because I've just accepted the fact that's where I'm at. And everybody is at different phases and it's okay. Anyhow, this is like so long. So sorry for just rambling on. But that's what I do best. When you put me in my room with this time and this space and this recorder. Anyhow, thank you for watching. Have a beautiful, beautiful day or night, and blessings to one and all. Amen.